Hello. In my last video, I tied an October Caddis and a bread crust nymph, and both were quite different than the original patterns. And I kept tinkering around, and I came up with what I think is a better solution to the problem I was trying to solve. And it is still not a bread crust nymph, but here we go. We're going to tie it on a size 16 fulling mill hook, and we're going to use the same rusty orange hare's ear dubbing. I think that's perfect for our October Caddis. It's going to be ribbed with a gold Mylar, and I'm going to use this black ultra wire instead of the Hackle stem that I did on the last version. It's a little more durable and a little easier to work with. And we'll use ice stub for the thorax. I mentioned before that I don't have a fly shop, so I don't have access to all those cool, hey, look at this great orange neck, and it makes a great October Caddis, or so on and so forth. So we're going to pick feathers from this pheasant skin. And there's some body feathers there that'll make a nice soft hackle. And I'm going to tie it and hold it all together with this orange Danville thread. So we've got a hook in the vise, and we're getting started. I always leave a little room up there. And I think that's all AK Best. I think he was one of the first ones I saw that said you don't have to start right behind the eye. He said something about being thrifty and not wasting thread. For me, it reminds me not to crowd the eye. And it really isn't necessary to wrap all the way up to the eye on many of these flies. So I went about halfway back or to the point, and I started in the wire, wrapping the wire directly against the hook. Doesn't weaken it or compromise it. Some of the tail fibers, if you do that, you'll weaken them, and they seem to break off easier. So here I'm bundling up the tip of a feather that came from the rump of that pheasant skin. And it's got that orange, amberish orange look to it, and I think we're still trying to imitate a shuck. And we'll get that started and held in place. Trim off the excess. And we're going to tie in a piece of that gold mylar. So I have it silver side out, and with the hopes that it'll flip over and the way it's supposed to, and the gold will show. So I'll get that wrapped down, and we have a pretty level body underneath, but we're going to dub it. It's going to be a chunky little thing like we talked about in the last video. And we have the Hare's Ear Plus. So you can see those. I was guessing that those shiny fibers were antron. It's basically a burnt orange rabbit fur dubbing. There are a few guard hairs in this, and most either get wrapped down or trimmed off later, but it's a little buggy, a little picky. So I got back to the point where the tail was tied in and did that cross wrap there. And I'm going to run out of dubbing, so we'll have to add a little more. Yeah, it shouldn't take too much more to get up to that point where the thread ended or began. And knowing that we're going to add the ice stub there for a thorax, so we can leave some room for that. So I've kind of got the shape that I want. You can see some of those long fibers sticking out. I'm going to put a half hitch in because we're going to wrap a couple of ribs here, and I don't want we don't want anything to kind of come loose or come undone. I'm going to use the rotary feature, grab the gold mylar first. Mentioned in the last video, we want to be careful where we climb up on with that gold mylar so that it doesn't slip off the back, so to speak. And actually, if you look here, it slipped off the front, which isn't a problem because we're going to cover that up. But that's the look that we're trying to avoid at the back of the fly, and that it's going to get wrapped down, so it's going to stay tight. It's not going to be a problem. But on the back of the fly, it kind of would get loose. Maybe a fish's tooth would get in it, and it's fun to catch a fish. But if your fly is destroyed after just one fish because you left the tinsel loose, shame on you. So another couple of whips or short whip finish or a couple of half hitches, depending on how you want to look at that. And we'll get the wire in. I want to wrap the wire just beside that gold Mylar. So I'm going a little slow here. I'm trying to be careful. When magnified on camera, I can see every little mistake, and I'm sure you guys do too. So, but there we are. We're up to the front. And I got a little smarter this time too. I left the wire long enough that I could turn everything toward me and just change hands so I don't have to do the old drop the bobbin over the top method to hold things in place. So I get a couple of wraps on them. Wire was a little tougher than I thought it was. I gave it a few twists and it finally surrendered. And we'll pick out the longer fibers. You could brush this out at this point and show a little more fuzz here. It's going to be a wet fly. It's going to sink. It's not necessarily without some weight or a heavier nymph above or below it. It's not necessarily going to sink to the bottom. There's no real weight in this. It has the dubbing. When it gets wet, it's kind of, I don't know, it's maybe neutral as far as buoyancy goes. But so if you need to fish this a little deeper, you might have to do something above or below. A split shot above it's not a bad idea. Drop shotting might work as well. Yeah, I talked in the last video, so that the idea here is we want to kind of swing these and have them appear like, if you're really trying to imitate the caddis, we want them to appear like the fly making its way to shore so it could crawl up on something and hatch. And to me that looks pretty good so far. I think in the last one I had one too many wraps of the tinsel and the ribbing. So there's another body feather from that pheasant skin. This one has the blue tips, which I think are pretty cool. The length is about perfect for this, the way I like it anyways. Feel free to adjust. And I did a little different on this one too. After you tie a couple, you get better. I always get anxious and film one a little before I get the hang of it. But I tied it in by the thicker part of the stem. I'm going to pull the fibers back, but I wrap forward on this. So if you'll notice, I'm wrapping back, and then I'm going to come through it with the thread. And then actually, since this fly gets kind of a largish head on it, thread head, all this stuff's going to get kind of wrapped down. So another adjustment I made since my last video was I'm trying to shoot for fewer fibers. My last one that I did was awful leggy. So here we're trying for just about half of what I put on the last fly. So we'll pull everything back. Some of the fibers in that feather kind of broke off, but we want to do that now. Just from pulling them back, I see I lost some tips, but not a big deal. There's still plenty of legs left. That one's going to fight a little bit, but we'll get it. So there, I've established the length of the head's going to be about 1 eye length. And I thought I could just pop the tip of that feather off. But as you'll see here, that's a sturdy feather. So we're going to come back with the scissors. And I'm a little shaky. This is a little late in the morning and I've had one too many cups of coffee, so I apologize for the shaky hands. And I saw my thread starting to flatten out and split there a little bit, so I'm going to twist it up, work my way to the back, and in between camera shots it slid back to the front. But we'll hop back and then we're going to do a back to front whip finish. And I wasn't counting, but I went for that extra turn in the front and it looked like it was going to get a little down close to the eye, so I backed up one turn and pulled it tight. So this was more to my liking. It's a little more durable. It's got wire instead of a hackle stem. Still have the nice orange head on it that I think a lot of these fish I'm going to be fishing for are recently stocked in the fall, and they like red and orange, um, especially when the water's not so clear. We'll see what happens when we get out there. So we're going to add a drop of Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails, kind of work it all the way around, and there you have it. So this is like part two. Looks a little better than what I did in the last video. It's a little more durable. So I'm going to have a few of these in my box for the fall season, and with any luck, I'll net a few trout with them. So thanks for hanging in there, watching till the end, and if you want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon, and until next time, be safe.